Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for July 20th of 2023. Currently there are two main regions for severe weather development for today. There are two enhanced risks, one for the Detroit region into parts of Indiana for northern Ohio and parts of western/northwestern Pennsylvania, as well as a pretty large slight risk around that extends into the Atlantic Ocean, as well as the majority of Pennsylvania and parts of New York, as well as the majority of eastern Michigan, across Indiana, majority of Kentucky and Tennessee, northern Alabama and northern Georgia, and the majority of South Carolina and parts of western/southern North Carolina here. There's also another enhanced risk for parts of eastern Colorado, southwestern Kansas, as well as the Oklahoma Panhandle, and a little bit of the northern Texas Panhandle, as well as a slight risk around that for northern Oklahoma into parts of Nebraska, Wyoming, and eastern Colorado, and maybe even parts of New Mexico as well. This is all tied together by one big marginal threat, this is a huge area for severe weather development for today. As for our threats for today, we do have two 5% tornado threats, one for a large portion of the enhanced risk region for the Detroit region into northern Ohio, as well as a 5% for eastern Colorado / southeastern Colorado, with a 2% around that, and 2% for pretty much the majority of the slight risk region for the eastern coast threat. As for wind, there are dual 30%, however, the one for the high plains does have a hatch significant region on it, so we could see the possibility of some destructive outflow gusts. As well as for hail, there is a 30% with a hatch significant region for the enhanced risk over towards Michigan and the Detroit region, so we could see the possibility of large to very large hail, possibly even gorilla hail as well. And then back towards the high plains for eastern Colorado, you can see that we do have a 15% with a hatch significant region, so we could also see the possibility of large to very large and possibly even gorilla hail in this region as well. Taking a look at our pivotal weather model, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do, you can see that we do have a shortwave trough that is moving across the enhanced risk region in the Detroit region with a low pressure system in the Great Lakes region. You see a very prominent change in direction here. It's kind of subtle, but you can definitely see it. That should allow for the possibility of some directional shear to support that 5% tornado threat, as well as some change in direction, not as prominent further down south for the rest of that 2% tornado threat, but it will definitely allow for the possibility of some directional shear to allow for the possibility of some tornadic development for that 2% and 5% tornado threats across the enhanced risk region and the 2% tornado threat region. The very strong mid-level flow aloft will allow for the possibility of elongated hodographs, which will in turn allow for the possibility of some large to very large hail, possibly even gorilla hail across the Detroit region and the Ohio Valley enhanced risk region. And then taking a look at our 500 millibars for the enhanced risk region back towards the high plains, you can see that we do have a shortwave trough that is moving through the region as well. There is a low pressure system attached to it. It is kind of hard to tell, but it is in Nebraska and two parts of South Dakota. And you can see there is a little bit of a change in direction here, which will allow for the possibility of some directional shear kind of being concentrated in that 5% tornado threat region to allow for the possibility of that 5% tornado threat region and some directional shear to help support the possibility of tornadic development in that region in particular. However, overall, this shortwave trough is going to be the main trigger for severe weather development across this region, as well as allow for the possibility of some elongated hodographs and in turn allow for the possibility of some large hail. Taking a look at our dew points, starting off with the enhanced risk region for the Detroit region into Ohio, you can see that we do have some fairly strong dew points across the slight risk region and the enhanced risk region. You can see we even have dew points in Tennessee in the 80s to even the 81s, and they are barely getting up to 83 in the Atlantic Ocean. So that is pretty insane in terms of dew points, and if we have strong lapse rates, that will allow for the possibility of very, very strong instability. And regardless, even if we don't have strong lapse rates, this will probably allow for the possibility of very, very strong instability to support some strong severe weather development across a lot of this region. However, for the enhanced risk region, we do have dew points that are much more subtle, dew points that are in the 60s to upper 60s, as well as the low to maybe the mid 70s as well. And if we have strong lapse rates, we could see the possibility of some pretty strong instability, possibly getting up to the 3000s. And then back towards the enhanced risk region for the high plains, you can see that we do have some fairly strong dew points as well. We have dew points that are reaching the 60s, the low to mid and upper 60s, as well as the low 70s. So if we have strong lapse rates, we could see the possibility of some fairly strong instability here as well. We usually do have some pretty strong lapse rates back towards this region, so we could definitely see the possibility of Cape values that do reach the 3000s, as well as back towards the enhanced risk region in Detroit and Ohio as well. Taking a look at our lapse rates, starting off with the enhanced risk region for the Detroit region and the Ohio Valley, you can see that we do have some fairly strong lapse rates in that region in particular. We have lapse rates that are in the 7s and 6s, and with the dew points that were given, we could definitely see the possibility of Cape values that do reach the 3000, possibly the mid 3000s, and then back towards the enhanced risk region across the high plains, you can see that we do have some fairly strong lapse rates as well. They are similar to the enhanced risk region back towards the Detroit region, which will definitely allow for the possibility of probably more subtle instability, getting up to the 3000s, possibly the mid 3000s as well, but it's going to be harder to get up to those mid 3000s with overall weaker lapse rates and weaker dew points. However, it is definitely possible that we get Cape values that do reach the low to mid 3000s and even the upper 2000s back in this region as well. Taking a look at our instability, starting off the enhanced risk region for the Detroit region and the northern Ohio Valley, you can see that we do have some fairly strong Cape values that are reaching the mid and upper 3000s, as well as the mid and upper 2000s, and even the low 4000s. Now, I did see a little bit of low 4000s, yeah, right here. So with strong mid-level flow aloft and the possibility of elongated photographs, in turn will allow for the possibility of some large to very large hail, as well as the possibility of gorilla hail. And the strong instability will also allow for the possibility of very strong outflow gusts, and then with whatever directional shear we have, we could definitely see the possibility of a few tornadoes back towards this region. And then back towards the high plains, you can see that we do have some fairly strong instability as well. Cape values that aren't nearly as strong, but they are in the mid and upper 2000s, as well as the low to possibly the mid 3000s, with strong mid-level flow aloft and the possibility of elongated photographs, in turn allowing for the possibility of large hail, as well as the possibility of very large hail to possibly even gorilla hail with this kind of instability and mid-level flow aloft. And with strong instability and strong lapse rates as well, we could see the possibility of destructive outflow gusts, and with whatever directional shear we have, we could definitely see the possibility of a few tornadoes back towards this region as well. Taking a look at our bulk shear, I primarily look at bulk shear so we can get an idea of our speed shear compared to our directional shear. However, it is a speed shear and directional shear mixed together, but if we have strong mid-level flow aloft, we can definitely know that a lot of this is going to be mostly speed shear and not really all directional shear. However, it does combine the two. However, taking a look at the areas that have the possibility of a large hail, starting off with the enhanced risk region back towards the Detroit and Ohio region, you can see that we do have some fairly strong speed shear in the region. Directional shear hasn't quite developed just yet, and I'll show you that on our storm relative helicity models. So a lot of this is going to be mostly speed shear, with speed shear that is in the 30 knots, the 35 knots, and even higher. So that's going to allow for the possibility of elongated photographs, and again, in turn, the possibility of large to very large hail, possibly even gorilla hail. And then back towards the high plains, you can see that we do have some fairly strong speed shear as well. We have speed shear that is reaching the 70 knots as well as the 60 knots, and possibly even higher, getting up to even the upper 70 knots as well. I thought I saw some 80s in there, I guess I didn't. However, this is still very, very strong speed shear, which will allow for the possibility of very elongated photographs and the possibility of some large to very large hail, possibly even gorilla hail as well. Taking a look at our storm relative helicity, starting off with the 5% tornado threat region for the enhanced risk region, you can see that we don't really have all that strong directional shear compared to further down south across the rest of the 2% tornado threat. However, some overall very, very weak directional shear could allow for the possibility of at most a 2% tornado threat. However, I'm not really seeing all that strong directional shear to warrant a 5% tornado threat in that particular region. However, instability will support it. I don't think directional shear in that 5% tornado threat region will, as storms are moving west to east, and there's not really all that strong directional shear ahead of that line to support a 5% tornado threat until we get to around New York and Pennsylvania, where we could see the possibility of a 1 or 2 brief tornadoes with some strong directional shear ahead of outflow boundaries, but across the entire 2% tornado threat region. We also do have some fairly strong directional shear as well. Mainly across Tennessee, you see a bunch of strong directional shear, which will allow for the possibility of that 2% tornado threat. And then further on in time, you can see that a lot of strong directional shear across the rest of that 2% tornado threat region will support the possibility of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes across that 2% tornado threat region. And then taking a look at the 5% tornado threat region for the high plains, you can see, let me zoom in here, that we do have some fairly strong directional shear ahead of outflow boundaries. It is kind of hard to see, and I am kind of taken back a little bit. It is a little bit difficult for me to forecast this, and I originally thought that it wouldn't really warrant a 5% tornado threat. However, it does look like that up in there, it is kind of clustered, could support the possibility of a 5% tornado threat. However, our main areas of directional shear are going to be across Oklahoma, Texas, and parts of New Mexico. So we could see the possibility of a continued tornado threat, possibly as well as a 5%, as we do have some pretty strong directional shear in the 300 meters squared a second squared and 200 meters squared a second squared across the Texas Panhandle, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. However, we could see the possibility of some tornadic development, maybe in the 5% tornado threat range across the high plains in Colorado. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator, and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And if you live in any of the areas that I covered for severe weather development for today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.